I got that generic IBS diagnosis and was just sent on my way
You know
to
what
suffer.
I think IBS is?
BS.
I think IBS is BS. Thank you. If you can share with people what do you think were some of the data that you discovered and how did it link up with what was really causing this problem?
Food mapping. There's nothing like it. If I could recommend anyone to do anything, it is food mapping. I talk about it with my podmates. We're still super connected. We would have never figured out our food sensitivities if we didn't join this program. And it's the number one trigger for our POTS.
Yes.
Yeah. Hormones, too. Hormones are huge.
Just listen, number 1 and number 2 trigger.
Yeah.
There's the number 3 trigger, too. And I know
blood sugar.
Oh, my God, smarty pants. You are so smart. So let's talk about, first, people don't realize, and let's go back to why I say POTS is not a cardiologist's problem. It's not a cardiology or a heart problem. What Saniya just mentioned was 3 of the top 3 major causes for POTS and dysautonomia are number 1, she said food mapping. And food mapping is a system I created to address digestion problems as well as food sensitivity problems. If you don't address food digestion and food sensitivity at the same time from both sides of the problem, you can't solve the food contribution to POTS, right? So she said that was number 1. Secondly, she said hormones. And third, she said blood sugar. But number 1, let's talk food mapping.
Yeah.
What did you discover about either the digestion process, your digestion process, or your food sensitivities? That was the linchpin here.
Yeah, for me, it was definitely gluten. I grew up on gluten, would have never gone gluten-free. It was my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I have a genetic gluten sensitivity. So we do not get along. Also, something extremely interesting that I would have never figured out is I have an allergy to canola seed, which the primary, what I used to eat out a ton. And they use vegetable oil blend and canola oil is in it. And I was constantly getting triggered. Yeah. And I would have never figured that out. Eggs are a hell no for me. I was eating eggs all the time. So many things I would have never figured out on my own. Well,
so here's the thing. A lot of people think that when they undergo the food mapping process for me with us is that number 1 is data driven, right? It's completely, I'm not filling your woo woo. It's data driven. Okay. So there's data that tells Saniya that these were the couple foods that were triggering the problem. Yeah. But then on the other hand, a lot of people assume that when they do something like this, it means they have to eliminate more and more food. Now, you listed a couple things, but I'm curious, what your experience was and also the experience of people you saw. I find that most people we work with, they've eliminated so much without results that now that they got the data, yes, there's 3 or 4 things that you have 3 or 4 categories or things you have to remove, but you find yourself actually adding more and more foods back in while you're feeling better. What was your experience like?
Yeah, I mean, something so silly was salads. My dad used to make us salads every Sunday, and I'd be like, I can't eat that. I think I'm allergic to lettuce. And the whole time it was the crouton. So I got rid of something so nutrient dense for so long for no reason. And again, chatting with my podmates, they got rid of so many cruciferous vegetables and fruits that they never needed to get rid of because that was never the issue.
Well, I remember even myself in my own journey, I was afraid of fruit because of carbs. You know how many of us were like, oh, if you just cut sugar, this is going to solve the problem. And you're like cutting all carbs and we're cutting things like fruit, which some of it can be really helpful. Yeah. And fun to eat, not even to say. Now, that's the food allergy piece of food mapping. What about digestion side of this? Did you find nothing wrong with your digestion or was that a surprising linchpin?
Oh, no. I came in knowing something's wrong with my digestion, but I got that generic IBS diagnosis and was just sent on my way to suffer.
I think IBS is?
BS.
I think IBS is BS. Thank you. Keep going.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there are so many things wrong with my digestion, just not digesting things properly. And Digested is the best supplement I have taken. It has cleared up my decade of digestion, IBS issues.
Well, but here's something interesting about Saniya's case and anyone who's listening. How would you out there and how would Saniya and how would I ever even figure out what symptoms were caused by actual food allergies or sensitivities and what was actually caused by her digestion? Right? And I'm going to say it right out there right now. And Saniya, you can back me up or add to this. Any person with POTS, dysautonomia, autoimmune issues, IBS issues out there, at least 50% of your symptoms are caused by digestion. Yeah. 50% of the problems are caused by actual real food allergies. And it is very difficult out there, if you're working on your own or with someone, for them to tell a difference between the two.
Absolutely.
Okay? Which to me is a critical piece here. So for me, what digestion issues do you know you have for sure that was part of the symptoms of your IBS? We already identified what the food data was. What did you learn about your digestion that you're like, I know I have this problem or these problems?
Well, I would go, I had very irregular bowel movements. So I knew that I wasn't even getting any of the nutrients from any of the food that I was consuming daily, even if it was considered what I considered at the time really good for me. So that alone that has changed significantly for me. So that alone, I knew, okay, I have digestion issues.
Well, the other thing is order matters, meaning that one of the first things we do in the program is we address digestion first, weeks before we even get to the data around the food. So then she could actually, the order you do things is part of the data collection. So if she's implementing something for her digestion and those symptoms are already improving and resolving, and then you layer on the data from the food later, we know exactly what's causing what. Does that make sense? I mean, was that something for you? Did the order on that matter for you?
The order was, I think, the master plan of it all, honestly. Without the order, if you just start with food mapping and eliminating these things or bringing things back in without addressing digestion and what's actually going on, because so many of us come into it blindly, you can remove all you want, but if you're not fixing that, nothing's going to get better.
Well, back to the food piece, a lot of people think that I'm going to address my food sensitivity or food allergies by elimination diet. For you, did you try elimination diet and did it work? I
did not, no.
Okay. Secondly, some people will say, well, I am going to get some food allergy testing from my allergist. And that doesn't work because that's IgE, immediate anaphylactic allergies, which has nothing to do with what we call low allergies, which we call food sensitivities. That's hard to figure out. Food sensitivities, which is IgG allergy branch related, it's really hard to figure out. And the problem is, I don't know if you had that problem, but many people I work with said, I went and I did that test with my naturopath or functional medicine doctor. I had food mapping testing done with them, or I did a mail order test and all that. And that didn't work because the results were inaccurate. The test was useless, or I removed all that stuff and I reintroduced it and there was no difference. A lot of you I work with and you saw in the program had that kind of experience. Did you undergo any sort of allergy testing with an allergist or have food sensitivity IgG testing done?
I did not. No. The functional practitioner that I was working with was saying that those were useless and of no use for me. And
Okay, so we're going to talk about that. So even in the naturopathic functional medicine world around food allergies and food sensitivities, there's a lot of bunk going on. Okay, so her naturopath functional doc says those tests are bunk, they're completely useless. And I'm going to stand up here and say that's not true. Many of the testing and the education providers have received around it is bunk. And so for me, getting the right test, very specifically, the right test is really important, but also learning how to understand those results accurately was also critical. Let me ask you, you heard that they were junk, bunk, useless. What was your experience with the data?
Life-changing for sure. Because it's not a diet. So many people see it as this is a diet. This is your real personal data, your body telling you exactly what you can and cannot have. And it becomes a lifestyle change at that point.
How did you know it was accurate?
Because actually, I knew it was accurate because those were all the things when I started to look back that were flaring me up. And during the program, actually like a week before I got my food mapping results, I had these corn chips that were gluten-free and I was trying them out and I got sick. And at the time I was like, maybe it's a corn sensitivity. And when it came back and it was a canola seed, I said, oh my gosh, how did this happen?
But to me, Saniya, the reason you went from frustrated, irritable face to happy face right now is because I think you have gained self-trust.
Absolutely.
The data affirmed for you and acknowledged for you what your body was already telling you. You're learning to believe your body and what she's telling you.
Absolutely.
I love that. So this is where getting the right data is really important. But the other thing is, when we were going over those results, you talked about genetic gluten sensitivity. So there is genetic data that we're actually getting out of these tests and patterns I see out of these tests. That's really critical because maybe it doesn't apply to you. It will in the future. But when I tell people, when we share our accurate data with you, 50% of what you're sensitive to, your children will be, and your parent is. Yeah. So what I tell people is when you're the person in the family that's the generational breaker in this cycle, and you do food mapping first, minimally it affects 3 generations, the generation above and the generation below you. You inherited that gluten intolerance from one or both your parents. I bet that was a fun conversation.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely my mother, and we are working with her getting gluten-free because she gets so many of the similar symptoms that I get when she does eat gluten. So it's definitely my mom for sure.
I love it. I love it. Well, she gave you the good too. If you're going to blame her for the bad, you better blame her for the good too.
Oh, wait. She's the reason why I'm here. I owe it all to her.
I love that.
Everything to her.
Boy, that was an amazing interview with Saniya and her mom, surprise guest mom. And I'm touched and I'm proud. These are the kind of kick-ass people we work with. And I love if you or anyone you know is struggling with POTS, dysautonomia, long haul, or unexplained chronic health symptoms like fatigue, brain fog, irritability, irritable bowel syndrome, which you know now, I think IBS is BS. If you're struggling with any chronic health related symptoms, I have a POTS and dysautonomia and long haul training series available. If you want the training series, look at the copy above or below this video and we will get the POTS training series to you. It's a free multi-part training that shows you what are some of the underlying causes of POTS, dysautonomia and long haul, some of which Saniya discussed in her interview. Click the link below and watch my free training. Learn this one simple concept and be ready to get life back on track. Click the link below.